Hello, 'tis I. Alright, I'm just going to start this from when I finished recording the last Live to email. Not when I actually finished it, because I must confess that there was like a week gap when I voice typed the whole like email thing and then when I actually edited it. So, I mean, honestly, at this point, given the immense amount of grammatical as well as like actual word mistakes voice typing gives me, whenever I talk at like any speed other than stupid slow, I'm not entirely sure it's faster. I mean, you would think it would be, but I can type really fast and with pretty minimal errors. Although, ironically, actually, when I typed this sentence, I kid you not, I made like 10 times my number of average errors. So that was kind of funny. But, you know, with voice typing, you have to manually put in all the punctuation and capitalization, which means moving the cursor to a particular spot every time I finish a sentence, at the very least. And surprisingly, it takes me almost as much time, or perhaps more time, to just type the sentence. Plus, there's like so much cognitive effort that goes into like the tiny little wrist movements you have to do to get the cursor just right, and that kind of hurts my soul. There's also a lot of words I get wrong, and when I'm going through it, I'm like, well, that sounded fine when I was saying it, but it doesn't really make that much sense written out. So I end up rewriting significant parts of the email anyway, which I'm sure if any of you actually read and listen, you would actually really notice and probably find it vexing. So at this point, I think I'm convinced that voice typing is not the way to go. I think it's just typing is better. Plus, it has the added benefit of me being able to work on live demo while I'm at like work, which is what I was doing right now when I was writing this. And like for the first time ever, I actually had no homework to do at work, so that was cool. So yeah, the old written word. That's the plan, at least for this email. So basically, all that aside, I'm finishing up recording my last live email. Well, no, I am, but I did. And then I played some Beat Saber because I'm good at that game. I like being good at things. It was then Friday, so during during the gap between my classes and work, I went to a very lackluster tutoring session for statics. Basically, there was this one square room about the width of my height, and like with a single table and chair, and it's 24-hour tutoring for mech students. And I mean, it's cool they have that, I guess, but it's also like, well, this room has the capacity for 2 people, a student and an instructor, and they must really be banking upon the fact that there is really, really low demand. But yeah, despite the states of affairs that I just described, aka tiny room and no space, I happened to get there when the room was indeed empty of other students, which came as a surprise to me. And at first I thought myself fortunate for having miraculously arrived at a time when no other mech student in all of CSU needed help with some class. But as I actually began to ask questions, I soon realized why there was no one in this tiny tutoring room. Because the tutor had no idea what they're talking about. So see, basically how MESA, aka the tiny tutoring room, works is that senior students are hired to help undergraduates on like a on-demand basis, which in principle is a good idea. But the problem is that the seniors actually remember nothing from their sophomore year. Like, I knew more than she did. And I mean, that's somewhat understandable because it's been 2 years, but it's also kind of disturbing. And I've got to say, if you could be considered a very successful senior, because I'm assuming there's like GPA required to be a tutor, you can't just have anyone do that, and entirely forget how to solve a truss in statics, then it begs the question, why do I bother learning statics? If I'm literally just going to forget it anyway, and there are 0 repercussions, then what the heck am I learning in the first place for? So yeah, basically the tutor lady just spent 20, no, maybe like 30 minutes trying to remember how to solve trusses and efficiently using Google, which should be fair. I will give her props for it. Her Google skills were above average. So I guess if you have like no life skills, these guys might be helpful. But I do have life skills and I have access to the internet, and it's actually more efficient for me to do this on my own because I don't have to then spend 30 minutes having her figure out how to solve problems I don't know how to solve. So yeah, pretty disappointing. And see, it's not like I need tutoring, it's more like I want tutoring. In other words, I'm fundamentally lazy. Or you can call me efficient, equally valid. And I just think it's dumb to spend 15 minutes using the interwebs to find an answer when you can just talk to a dude and find it in 3. So yeah, Mesa sucked at the tutoring, at least the sort of tutoring I needed for, because it took longer, not shorter, to find the information via them. So yeah, that was dumb and sad. So I did that, and then I did a math quiz. I read more of Owen's book for the book study Alan, Matt, and I are doing, plus this new guy's now here, whose name I forgot. I then proceeded to go on a run with Dad, and I did a 7-minute and 30-mile pace for over 2.5 miles. So I'm getting back up there. That was nice to see. Then finally, that night I played a bit of Minecraft and watched a bit of anime. Saturday morning I participated in a book study, which was decent. I worked on making chainmail links, which was okay, but I spent like two hours designing this like shirt model thing, and it worked out okay, but I was a little bit disappointed in my results. But we'll have to see how the actual chest plate turns out when I finally actually make it. So yeah, it was good at least not be making a bazillion rings for once. After that, Joe finally had some free time, and I was able to play some Magic with him and catch up a little bit, so that was a big bueno. And yeah, after that, I went to Maddie's birthday party, which was honestly pretty lame. We did play a bit of Smash Bros, and you and I also got to watch a few episodes of Clone Wars while they were playing Cards Against Humanity. So, because I didn't want to participate in that. So it wasn't like all bad, but it was still pretty lame. And then once I got home, it was not too late, so I decided to watch a single episode of anime and then go to sleep. Sunday morning, I went to church, and that was average. But afterwards, as we were all hanging out and playing Magic at Lunch Bunch, it kind of struck me with a renewed vigor how cool the community I am as part of Southgate, you know? Because Southgate is pretty fancy. So yeah, after I had that brief epiphany of appreciation, I then ceased to have that epiphany and returned to my normal level of Southgate appreciation. A.k.a. I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I was like, okay, cool. That's how that went. From church, I drove to Neil's house where I played a tiny bit of D&D before receiving a call from my mom who was like, did you forget we were doing family things this Sunday? To which I was like, yep, totally forgot that. And so I yeeted myself from D&D for the sake of my family. And as it might be expected, I then did family things. We drove to Estes Park in Ben's car. You know, hypothetically, Grace should be the next one to drive because I drove first and Ben. But Ben's really on the edge of her driving, so it's probably not going to happen. And then in Estes, I played my dad a game of chess at the Ink and Brew, which I surprisingly lost. Note, I played without my queen. And I will say, he did exceed my expectations of his skills. Thus, unwilling to be, defeated as the last note, I then challenged him to a rematch wherein I did have my queen and I crushed him very thoroughly. I think it was like less than 20 turn win. So, yeah, with that, my power was restored. All things are at peace. And then after that, we got food at a pretty nice restaurant and then went back home. And overall, I give the time a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Once I got home, I spent like 2 hours trying to learn this candy cane, cord, chainmail weave, and I think I got it. It might have taken like another half an hour to make it instinctual, but I was doing pretty well. And then I was like, why am I doing this? Because I spent 2 hours and I had like an inch of weave. And I'm like, this isn't worth 2 hours. So I gave up. But I did learn it. Okay, I learned it, and then I decided it was not worth learning, and so I gave up. And in the words of my friend Michael, if at first you don't succeed, then depending on the nature of the task, I'm out to quit now to avoid years of unhealthy self-comparison and doubt. As you see, he's very wise. I just think that's a great quote. The next day, I went back to the grind. I went to class and did my mech project. And then I went to attend John's etymology. Nope, not etymology. Bug science, whatever the word is. Entomology. Defense. And I'll be honest, I was actually pretty radically disappointed. See, I'm pretty confident John doesn't read these, so I think this respective rant is low risk. And even if he did read these, this is still my honest opinion. So I would say it anyway. But this is why you should read live emails. So when I say bad things about you, you know. Basically, the actual content in John's defense, I could probably find in a day. I guarantee a week. It seemed like he researched 5 peer-reviewed papers and put that information found into like a PowerPoint. Which would be great if it were, any old presentation, but this is like the culmination of a graduate degree. Like, if giving a presentation as good as John's is all it's required to get a major, then I feel like I qualify for 17 majors. Or, at the very least, could qualify for 17 majors given 17 weeks. So yeah, I was very underwhelmed, and totally expected him to fail, but he passed, which made me disappointed. Not in John necessarily, mind you. I'm happy he got his degree, but in the college's low standards. So my respect for all graduate degrees has decreased by at least 72%. It's very significant, the depreciation of the college degree dollar, or whatever you would call it. So yeah, I wasn't able to stick around for the decision of John's defense, but I was able to get the whole presentation, so I feel like I got an accurate picture. I then attended my Calc 3 class and proceeded to spend time in the National Resource Building, which is my routine, with the intent to do homework until Ratchet Christie. However, I did exactly 0 homeworks, because I got sucked into playing chess. And see, it's not habitual to go against better judgment in pragmatic matters. Like, usually, when I had the thought, I really should be doing homework and not playing chess right now, then I stop playing chess and do homework. But in this case, I just didn't. I kept being like, well, one more game. And I find the fact that I did so disturbing. I mean, I know it's just chess, but perhaps this event is indicative of a general degradation of my strength of will or habit of prudence. And if so, how long has this degradation been going on? And what's the despicable state of weakness my will is currently in? And if it's been going on for a while, is it possible that the unthinkable has occurred? Namely, my will strength has been reduced to slightly above average. As you can see, many existential questions plague me, and I may never know the answer. Moving on. See, I just said moving on, but to circle back. The fact that I find my instinctual response, now recorded, for all to cherish, is to make light of my failure of will indicates to me that perhaps this is actually a for reals legit serious problem instead of a not reals kinda but not serious problem. So yeah. Anyway, I went to Ratio wherein Noah, instead of being a base and cool leader, was lame and anti-Chad, and had us watch this video about Black Lives Matter instead of doing a Nerf war, which was very tragic. Not the video, the loss of Nerf, because, it's Nerf or nothing. However, the video was informative, perhaps a little polemic against the BLM movement, but whatever. And I didn't know anything about it at the time, because I never actually watched any of the actual George Floyd footage or anything like that. So admittedly, it was educational, albeit a little too late to be educacious because the whole Black Lives Matter movement is kind of over and done with. But it was still good. And once I ended that, I got home and ran with Dad, and I made a PR, personal record, which was really cool. I then started watching Somalia in the Forest Spirit with Dad, which was basically just an anime about a kid being a kid, and Dad seemed to like it so far. So I think I might have found an anime he enjoys. Yay. And then I slept. That Tuesday, I sacked my quiet time to go to ECE tutoring, only to find it entirely useless and proceed to regret my life decisions. I then registered for classes next semester, and I am very pleased to report that I should have ample time in the morning for my routines. Which I know, text doesn't express very well, but you can hear the tone of my voice now, and I'm actually pumped! Because I got a good schedule. Like, actually, having a good routine is so necessary for my growth as a human being right now. I value it immensely. So yeah, I did that. Ate food, did work, and then I spent 2 hours cleaning up the shop with the Baja Building Vehicle team. And that was mostly lame. Though I'm not terribly surprised. I did discover that the mechas are very messy. Mechanical engineers, not organizational skilled. Like, oh my gosh, it kind of pains my soul. Also, if I get cancer or some other lung disease, I guarantee you that cleaning session can be causally identified as the source of my death. The amount of dust and other strange, indescribable substances that I inhaled during that time should not be described. Should I wish to continue to deceive myself saying, it's probably fine, I'll be fine, don't worry about it, I'm good. So once I left that lung cancer-inducing environment, I then went to go to Joe's house where Magic was played, as well as some Minecraft. I found a skeleton spawner near to my base, which I plan to utilize, and that was cool. I then went home and engaged in a brief but refreshing hibernation. I know it's not technically accurate, but you know what? I gotta change it up somehow. How many times can you say I slept? Wednesday, I did quiet time in the morning. Took a statics quiz, and I did pretty well. I then experienced a hectic day at work because my boss was still gone for this Halloween all-inclusive resort thing. However, I did manage, albeit making some non-trivial mistakes I had to own up to later, which was really fun. I then hung out with Neo, watched some Clone Wars, went to King Supers to gather some sustenance. At that establishment, I did purchase some blackberries and croissants, and I must say that combo, blackberries and croissants, is very good. Not underestimate blackberries and fancy bread. I then gathered food, and we ate it, and then we fought strange aliens with snipers, and that was great. AKA, we played Halo. And during the fighting the strange aliens, Sydney and I got talking, and she decided that she'd be willing to coach me in singing. See, singing is another one of those Alex 1.0, yeah, I don't do that sort of things. But see, Alex 2.0 and his infinite wisdom and ability to overcome himself in the pursuit of being good at actually everything has decided to take Sydney up on her offer and learn how to sing. So yeah, I'm actually pretty pumped. Also, currently, kind of a bad student because I have not done any of my music homework. But I have constructed a series of very high-quality excuses that I can deploy on command and when asked. Thus, I think I'm going to be okay. After Neo's, I then went to Wednesday Night Magic, which was decent. I think my distaste for non-1v1 Magic play is growing. However, I did get to bring my chainmail, so it made it a bit better when I wait for like 10 minutes on my turn. So yeah, that made it bearable. The next Thursday, I faced a dilemma, which is I had to choose whether or not I would cover my coworker's shift. And see, as previously expressed, I deeply value my morning routine. And since I had to sack my morning routine for previous reasons, I was increasingly eager to return to it. But, as aforementioned, my boss is currently out of office, which means if someone did not cover my coworker's shift, our department would be legit up a creek. So I begrudgingly decided to do it. And don't get me wrong, I still got paid for the time, and hopefully I'm accumulating, social IOU bucks for when I'm sick. But it wasn't, great. It wasn't without its perks, but I didn't love it. I then took my ECE Pre-Me, which is basically like an easier pre-test that counts for part of your midterm test, but you can redo it if you want. And I thought I aced it, but it turns out I actually got one problem wrong because of evil trickery. What kind of professor puts down as a multiple choice question answer the right number, but off to 1 decimal place? See, I was just like, yep, that's the right value, and I moved on. But no! The answer was actually none of the above, because of a stupid decimal. And see, I understand, but I don't understand. I think that's just kind of cruel. So yeah, it was mega sad, and now I have this problem because I can redo it, but if I get worse, I'll do worse. And fair is a dumb reason to miss a problem when I got the right answer and just didn't circle the right thing because of the decimal point. But I don't want to risk doing worse, because I did decent otherwise. So yeah. It's dumb. I probably won't redo it, but it's still vexing. I then did homework and coordinated stuff with my makeshift VR hackathon team. Oh, and then the first snow of the year happened, which I would say was cool, but it's more accurate to say it was cold. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I channeled my inner John there for a second. But no, it actually wasn't cool, because biking plus snow is less than biking plus not snow. I also way underdressed, so my ears ceased to exist. They got so cold. However, after school, I went to my first singing lesson with Sydney, where basically she started testing my raw, unpolished abilities at the voicing skills. And as far as I can tell, she said my raw skill is above the raw skill average. I'm not sure by how much, but regardless, I'm glad I'm above the raw skill average. I then got home, ate food, participated in a hip hop dance club, and then I helped Grace out with math as I edited the last Left email and proceeded to action that out later that night. Friday, I did more school. I went to work and was able to finish the code for my upcoming Mech 105 project, which was a big bueno. I then did maximally garbage on a math quiz, but that's okay because they don't matter. See, only recently did it really sink in that my math quiz and homework grades are replaced by my exam average, which, you know, if it's higher, which I'm really hoping my exam average is higher than 0. And so, in retrospect, that makes sense of why the math teacher was like, feel free to cheat. I mean, not actually, but pretty much actually. So yeah, I'm gonna do fine as long as I don't fail my exams. So yeah. Although I did say this right before I was like unprepared for my Calc 3 exam, so it's kind of funny and ironic. Yeah, but after that, the VR hackathon began. So there's not much point in going in sequential order with the hackathon's happenings because the literal entirety of it until the very end was just sitting in a chair working on our respective computers. Like externally, if I say what happened, I'd be like, well, I worked on my computer. He worked on his computer. She worked on her computer, and we worked on our computers. It's like externally, nothing changes whatsoever. But internally, both to our persons and to our program, much changed. So let me treat the whole hackathon weekend as a unit and bestow upon you the great knowledge of what we did. Also, there's pictures, but you can't see them because that's how boys be. So basically, the VR hackathon, despite its name, does not involve any hacking. Rather, it was a weekend where 12 teams got together and coded educational games from scratch for VR headsets that HP sponsored us use. Now, first off, I would like to make the prevalent point that those headsets were garbage, or at least their sensors were. See, they were supposed to be like fancy high-tech sensor headsets that could tell you things like cognitive load, heartbeat, eye movement, etc. But the universal experience of everyone at that event is no, they did not tell you those things. Not because they couldn't in principle tell you those things, but rather because they just didn't. Everyone in my team, my team foremost of all, had trouble with the sensors. It was like a hackathon-wide pandemic. See, the plan was for one of our guys, Ronaldo, the only one of our members with an actual skill set, to make an AI network that could read the headset data and return things like anxiety levels and stuff. And of course, that sounded cool. I didn't have anything else for him to do, so I was like, go for it. Also, side note, I'd lead this team. See how that worked out is basically I just gathered a bunch of socially awkward CS majors and rallied them to my charismatic personality, and thus Unreal Haptics was born. So yeah, basically the entire competition, Ronaldo just spent developing an AI network which, while cool in theory, had one glaring flaw aptly pointed out by one of the tech supporters. Why? See, as the tech guy said, and yes, I do recognize that I knew this from the beginning, but when you're assigning tasks to a bunch of skillless freshmen, and one guy's like, hey, is it cool if I do this thing I know how to do? Your answer should be yes, regardless of how intentional or meaningless it is. So, yeah. Basically, the tech guy was like, why develop an AI network when you could just set a threshold condition? And Ronaldo's response was basically like, because I like AI networks, and it sounds cooler. Which is fair. Like, it was basically like, well, you could say you're anxious if you could gather the data that says anyone above a average 90, beats per minute heart rate is anxious. But instead he's like, I'm going to make an AI to tell if you're anxious. So that's why it was pointless. So yeah, basically he worked the whole competition on a pointless but technically functional AI network, which was going to be used to analyze the headset data. Thus, as you might expect, one of our project goals was to get him said data. But after one of our guys tried to get the sensors to work for 3 hours, and then he gave up and I actually made them work in like 15 minutes, either by epic leader skill or by chance, it turned out that HP doesn't make the datable accessible to the coder. Like, there's no way to export the data. All you could do is view it in their fancy data window. So yeah, that was the worst. And for no explicable reason, the data sensors turned off again. Hence, the HP's headsets sucked. But to be fair, they did the rest of their job just fine. So yeah, how the competition worked is that every team got to choose a prompt on a first-come, first-served basis, which my team was conveniently located to the closest position where the prompts were held. Therefore, we got, unjustly, the first pick. And the prompts were stuff like, make a thing to help the people get the anti-PTSD, or teach a thing to the children. And so we chose the make the scaredy man less scared prompt. Almost entirely because it was broad and ridiculously simple. But, actually our prompt was something like, make a VR experience, assist a therapist with helping a patient overcome phobia, something like that. So, we got the prompt right, and then over the free dinner they provided, basically debated if we should make the spiders crawl on you or make you go really, really high up and look down. Also, side note, but the free food was, great and all, but the food was mostly garbage. And so I feel like I was at least 63% deceived, and others have expressed this as well. Because at the original meeting, they gave us all free Panda Express, which made me think, oh, this event's going to have high-quality free food. But no, the Panda Express was just to lure us in. Thereafter, they gave us, cafeteria food. It was gross. So while we ate food, we eventually decided to go to the Heights one, which I pushed for pretty hard because I was like, spiders are hard to make. And I'm really glad we did that because we would have totally done worse. However, we also discussed a phobia I'd never heard of before called tryptophobia, which, upon seeing the images, I think I totally have. I would include a picture, but it actually disturbs me. I'm genuinely scared of it. So, I won't. But if any of you aren't actually made nervous by the picture of the hand with holes, like if you find that picture when you look up tryptophobia, then I feel like you have a significant disorder. And I'm not the one weird. You're the one weird. And I would tell you to look at it, but it actually freaks me out. So, don't. Yep. The competition progressed, and Ronaldo did his own thing. This one African girl, Sela, and I struck a deal. Well, not a deal. Basically, I was like, read papers, because she could hardly use her phone, and there's no way she could code. So that's what she did. We had a horse science turned computer science cat-eared headphone girl, which I feel like you now officially understand her personality given that description. And I was like, do art, because she was good at that. And then the other two non-me remaining members actually worked on coding. And one of them was not very good at figuring stuff out. The other was actually okay. So yeah, basically Ian and Brett, Ian being the one that was okay, and Brett being the one that was not so good at figuring stuff out. Basically just worked on coding the entire time while I did hodgepodge jobs like finding sounds and fixing the sensors and reading peer-reviewed papers and then spending 5 hours on a PowerPoint. And, oh, it also does bear mentioning that neither Brett nor Ian are two coders. The only two people coding, mind you, had no experience in Unity. Like, Brett had a tiny bit, but not in VR Unity. So yeah, hopefully that's given a pretty adequate description of just what my team was made of and how the event worked. So to actually describe the contents of the event, we in the end spent like 24 hours of work making our program, which consisted of you go up. I kid you not, the entire code was when the button is pressed, translate up at such and such a speed for such and such a time. And then once you reach the top, walk forward until you hit a wall. Then start over. That was the entirety of the code Ian and Brett created in 24 hours. Now, to be fair, they also stole some environments from the interwebs, which is legal, mind you. That was permitted by the competition. So it looked okay. Like, it was, you go up in an environment, but, like, it was still the most unimpressive code. Like, I know how hard it can be to code. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand that, especially when it's a brand new language. So I'm not saying they were the worst. I'm just saying their creation was the worst. And I actually know because I viewed every other program, well, not every, almost every other program that people made, and ours was by far the worst. Like, everyone else made stuff that's so much cooler than ours. But, and you knew there was a but coming. But, you know that PowerPoint I mentioned working on earlier? The one I spent 5 hours working on? Well, that's not an exaggeration. I really spent 5 hours working on it. And that PowerPoint was the most beautiful PowerPoint you have ever seen. And it wasn't even that long. And what could I possibly be doing that would take me 5 hours to make a 10-slide PowerPoint, might you ask? Answer, wordsmithing. See, it just so happened that before the event began, the VR organizer people sent the participants a copy of their grading criteria, and I, upon reading said grading criteria, realized something. Namely, that 90% of our grade was completely code independent. AKA, the way they set it up was, it was theoretically possible that you could have no working code and still get a B+ grade. So I got to work and basically made the perfect PowerPoint presentation that used just the right keywords to draw their attention to the relevant section of their grading sheet, while also being subtle enough to not make it obvious I was drawing their attention to the relevant section of their grading sheet. Basically, I made a PowerPoint that, if executed well, would give us a perfect score in every non-coding criteria possible. So, once judging came around, it became very clear that my PowerPoint was leagues above everyone else's. Since most of the participants were CS majors, aka socially awkward computer nerds, and I had way more social skills than them. Like, I do not think it's unlikely to say that it is a result of my PowerPoint that my team did as well as they did. Like, I had the best PowerPoint of everyone. So, you know, if anything, I probably made it a little too subtle because the people judging us weren't, you know, all, they were rushed because they had 7 minutes max to judge each team. And so they're trying to fill like 20 criteria in 7 minutes. And so I probably could be a bit more obvious. But regardless, I gave a spectacular presentation by comparison. A decent presentation, objectively, but you know what? Compared to everyone else's, compared to everyone else's, it was glorious. And thus the depravity of our code was hidden beneath my fancy talking and exuberant hand gestures. Honestly, if anything, our garbage code might have helped us. And I say that because it was just so simple and lame that all the judges had no problems understanding it. Like, it was literally press that button and look around as you go up. While everyone else with, you know, cool and skilled projects had to spend 1 or 2 minutes explaining how their code worked and how to utilize it and stuff. When we were like, press the button. And then the judges were like, I get you. So, and because the judges are old people, remind you, which are inept at computers and even more inept at VR. So, being simple, huge advantage. So yeah, in the end, my team, despite are literally the worst coding. Ended up getting third place, and we actually were told by one of the judges that we were 1 point from second place too. So you could basically say we got second, and everyone on my team agreed it was at least 50% due to my presentation. And not to sound arrogant, but it was 100% way more due to my presentation, like 70%. Like, yeah, our code was the worst. So yeah, me and my team of misfits ended up winning third place in the VR hackathon, as well as getting $166 each in prize money, which is epic. And basically that's how it went down. And the whole experience just proved to me that you can suck at your job, but if you can talk well, you can still succeed. Not that I approve of that moral, but it seems very true. After the whole event, I then ended up getting home pretty tired. I had dinner with Aunt Amber and Morgan, which was okay. There were a few interesting topics of conversation raised, shortly, but then they were quickly abandoned, so that was sad. But still, it was good to see the two of them. After that, I talked with Jordan from New Zealand for a while, and we ended up playing Terraria and making new worlds. That was fun. And basically, that's how my night ended. Monday, I once again took a coworker's shift, again begrudgingly, but for similar reasons as before. Did school, then did work, and notably, I did get 3 free Einstein bagels at work, which were left over from some sign-making event. So that was a definitive boon. I then went to some math tutoring for my third math midterm, got home, watched some anime, and then went to Ratio, where for the first time, I didn't have to do any homework because all my midterms were next week. So my classes were like, we'll give you a homework break so you can study. Thus, as you might surmise, I used that homework break to play Starvio. I actually got pretty far. I got like Amethyst, which is not bad for an hour and a half run. However, the presentation was garbage. I feel bad for the new people who came, and Karina too, because she came because Joe brought her. Because Neo's Alan, not the Alan by you, just was not very good at public speaking, and he evidently knew nothing about his topic, which is a big problem at Ratio because the whole point is kind of to be smart. So yeah, it was a cringe lecture, and yep, that's how life works. But at least Alan tried. I can give him the props for trying. I then talked to the Alan, the great and glorious one, and caught up on his life, which was good. I learned a lot of mostly irrelevant facts, but Alan is more enjoyable to hear rant than most, so it was tolerable. I then went home and found a new anime that wasn't Sketch, which is actually way harder to do than you might think. And I started, and then I had a conversation with Ben about voter fraud that he got me into. See, I decided to give Ben my vote because I was like, I don't care about voting, but Ben clearly does care. And then when he went to turn it in, he realized he had to sign it, so he forged my signature. And of course, I didn't know about this until I got an email from the government being like, the signature on your ballot did not match the one in our records. Please fix this or your ballot will be submitted to the Bureau of something for investigation. To which I was like, oh no. And proceeded to send them an email being like, that was totally my signature. There's no need to investigate voter fraud. Not at all. Don't worry about it. So yeah, I guess it's kind of comforting that our government can catch stuff like that, but it's also very much not comforting when you're the one that's, potentially going to get charged with voter fraud, which I'm sure does not bode well for you. So yeah, not comforting in my case. Thus, I got that sorted out, and I did not get charged for voter fraud, so that's good. I then proceeded to go to bed, and the following day lived once again. I was feeling sick, though, so I didn't do any exercise. However, I did go to the gym and chilled in the steam room for a while. And it turns out there's, a lot of health benefits from inhaling watery air for about 15 minutes. And, that was a motivating factor, but also, when your throat hurts, steam air feels nice. So that was also a motivating factor. Since I have been hanging around the steam room, since then, I have been hanging around the steam room and stretching instead of swimming after rock climbing, which is a decision I stand by so far, because I'm not flexible. Once I got home, I had a fantastic quiet time, perhaps the best of all the quiet times. And that might be just because, I missed so many quiet times prior and it was great by comparison. Or it just could be the case that the quiet time was just great. And I gotta be honest, I actually look forward to my quiet time so much. That 15 minutes of just pure peace is highly recommended. At work, I had the easiest, and thus far only easy, electrical engineering homework thus far. I got 153% or something like that. It was dumb. But I need that really easy homework because my grade in that class is garbage. I then worked on this Life with Email in class, chilled at home for a bit, and then went home and took went to take my statics test, which I ended up getting an 87 on. But half the points I lost were for super dumb things, like I didn't draw an axis system, or you didn't put down a free body diagram. And I'm salty because I got the problem right, I did it correctly, but no free body diagram, so I didn't get an A, and I'm sad. Once that midterm was done, as you might expect, my brain was pretty fried, so I took a time to go play Magic at Joe's, which is good. I then did that for a while and went home after that to take a bath and watch a bit of anime before responding to Majesty Reason and calling it close to the day. Wednesday, I was feeling mostly whole again, aka not sick, so that was nice. Even now, though, when I wrote this, not now, so past now, half an hour, I don't know how you call it, I was still feeling like my throat was still hurting, so it lasted for a while. I then did my quiet time in the morning, did school, went to work. Jess, my boss Jess, was finally back, but she had COVID, so she was masked up and a little bit out of the picture. But nevertheless, her returning made my workload reduce greatly, so that was a big bueno. And then did some math tutoring, went home, ate food, gathered some Ammo clips for AMVs, and then went to do more math tutoring for 2.5 hours. And see, at this point, I haven't done any of my calc homework for like months because my homework score just gets overridden by my midterm average. And if my Calc 3 midterm isn't any attestation, the first one I did, where I did all my homework, doing homework and knowing how the problems work is not enough to give you a good grade, because if you do not have perfect syntax, you'll still get a 64. Thus, my plan currently is, as long as I feel... Okay, restart, here we go. Thus, as long as I spend a few days before the midterm getting tutored and doing a bunch of problems and making sure I get the syntax just right, I get a grade that you would expect if I'd actually done all the homework, or worked hard, which is a pretty good deal. However, this time, I actually had a hard time grasping the concepts than I expected, since, I kind of didn't do any of the homework. So yeah, that was a bit of a wrench in my strategy. But after the 2.5 hour tutor time, I was kind of like, well, I got some stuff, but there's still some stuff I don't know. So I was making progress, but that was still stressful because I was like, I'm not there yet. But I can't really say that on my own because Calc 3 isn't like that. So I just put aside my level of concern and played Magic. The next day, I once again, out of necessity, stacked my quiet time for math tutoring. However, at the end of that time, I still didn't feel like I had enough knowledge. So when I showed up to my electrical engineering class, I had the most rigorous inner dialogue of all history regarding whether I should stay for the class or take that last opportunity to get calc tutoring before the exam. And after 15 minutes of intense deliberation of my inner council, it was resolved that we should go back to do the math tutoring. So I ditched the class and got tutoring for another hour or so, and then finally, at the end of that, felt like I got the math concept. I'm really glad I made the decision, by the way. That was 100% good. However, at the end of all that processes, my brain felt really tired, so I spent the next 3 hours just working on this live email and giving my brain a break before going to the calc midterm. And I am happy to say I did great. I got a 93 in the end, and honestly, I'm not too salty about how the grading went, because it has definitely been harsher. Literally what grade you get in this class is dependent upon what grader you get. It's super dumb. And obviously, the first time I got a really bad grade. I then crashed at home, did my classic food anime combo, and then I went to dance club, where I learned breakdancing, which, to be fair, was really cool. However, most of the people there can just pick up moves super fast, or at least it seems like it to me, and so I'm almost the worst one there, and that's a bit discouraging, especially when they make us do 2-on-2 dance battles, in which you're already singled out because everyone's around you, staring at you. And I ambitiously tried to do some set of really fast combo moves that I was able to do earlier, but then I totally blew it. It was bad. I was in the middle, and everyone was like, yeah, yeah, woo, woo, and I started going yeah, oh, and I 100% flopped. It was really embarrassing. So yeah, I have to recover from that. I'm a little bit dance traumatized, but hopefully I'll be better by this Thursday. Once I got home, I then had food with my dad and hung out with him. Me, him, and Mom then watched the next episode of Somali and the Forest Spirit, which is the least sketchy anime I think I've ever seen, except for maybe Bufuri. And then after that, I played some Beat Saber, and I conquered one more level and uploaded to my YouTube channel, and I just chilled. Friday, I had the standard start of the day, quiet time, work, classes, all that. However, I did get to get out my math early because, there was a quiz, and as I mentioned, quizzes get overridden. So I used my newfound free time to go on some shopping and get the gases and the cleaning of my cars and all that fun stuff. Once I got back, I then joined my mom and Grace for watching a non-anime movie, which reminded me why I don't watch live action anymore. I mean, it wasn't garbage, but just wasn't, good. It interested me as much as a 7, maybe a 6 rated anime. So yeah, I did that, and then I carpooled with Noah over to Love and Laser Tag, and we met up, Noah Ration Christy Noah, by the way. Over to Love and Laser Tag, we met up with Alan, Alec, that's Alan's brother, and Liam for a birthday thing for Alan. And the drive was good. It was notable because I got to hear all the ins and outs of Noah's romantic life, which was interesting. See, it seems to me like dating is just a ton of hurt, work, and risk assessment for not a lot of reward, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, after we got to Love and Laser Tag, I didn't actually play Love and Laser Tag, at least not yet, but rather we entered an escape room, which was next door, and let me tell you, that was a really cool escape room. It was themed off like a wizard's tower, and it has some really cool mechanics, like puzzles that require you to use your taste and smell, how many escape rooms do that? And wands that you'd have to draw particular shapes in the air to utilize, and magnet stuff, and blacklight stuff, and light stuff, and all really immersive environment. So it was actually a really cool room. Unfortunately, we didn't actually complete it. We needed an extra 5 minutes, and we used 3 hints. But the room had a 30% escape rate, so I don't feel too bad about those stats. However, Alec, Alan's brother, was kind of intense the whole time, and that made it less fun. He was guys, let's hurry up! And I don't really like people that do that, because it's much more fun to just, be super chill and act like the clock's not there. It makes the whole experience better. But yeah, the other thing that I didn't really like about the experience was everyone was really quick to ask for hints, and I personally like figuring stuff out. I don't really like asking for hints, so that, wasn't my favorite either. Thus, given that experience, I decided to tentatively search for an escape room buddy who has all the characteristics of doing escape rooms that I would, enjoy. and I can do escape rooms with. So I'm considering going what I'm going to call escape room dates with various people that I suspect would be good for the job. So we'll see if I do that sometime. We'll see. Anyway, it was a good time, and I'm glad we did it. And then after that, we went to laser tag, which was a lot of fun. I still have not cracked level 6 with my level laser tag skills, which I don't understand why. But, you know, it makes sense you didn't rank up too fast when you have to shoot people 3 times to get them out, as opposed to the level 1 people who just have to shoot you once, which is a huge disadvantage. Still, I did decently. There was this one soccer mode too that was actually like a ton of fun. How it worked is there's this one person vest that would flash indicating they had the ball, and then you could either pass to opponents by shooting. You could either pass opponents by shooting them, right? Not shooting with a ball. Okay, I understand I'm making this confusing. What doesn't have to be. You could either incapacitate opponents by shooting them, aka their vest would go dark and they couldn't do anything for a bit, or pass the ball to a teammate by shooting them. However, if an opponent shoots you while you have the ball, they steal the ball. So there's like some strategy you could have. Now, I'm not saying we actually used strategy. It was more like, what's our plan? Win! And everyone was just like, yeah! So it wasn't like we, strategized, but you could have strategized. And it was still a great time. The only significant downside to the whole experience was some high school freshman was super annoying. Like, holy cow, maximally irritable. It's really hard to believe I was one of those, aka high school freshman at one point in time. I do guarantee you I was not as annoying as he was, but it's possible that I was once a freshman. But yeah, it was a really good night, and I think I'm going to adopt Alan's method of birthday celebration in the future, because not asking people to bring a gift, but rather let their gift be them paying for themselves and whatever activities you do as a group is way better. Like, their gift to you is their presents. Haha, get it? Presents? Like, presents? It makes way more sense verbally than looking at the text. Wow. Look at that bad pun. It got better when I said it. Like all bad puns do. Saturday was busy. I did some quiet time in the morning, and then I spent like 6 hours at Griffin for the Magic the Gathering pre-release. And I did okay. I won 3 out of 5 games. But the big thing is I really pulled some like super expensive cards. Like I pulled at least $70 worth of cards, and I only paid $35 to play, so I doubled my money, which was cool. After that, I ended up stopping at home briefly before going to the bus station to pick up Michael. The dude doesn't have a car still. I don't know why. Like, he can totally afford one, but I will. Regardless, we hung out for the rest of the night, and we caught up on stuff, which was really good. And then once we philosophied ourselves out, I drove him back to Denver, and our conversation turned to more relational matters, so that I will not discuss for the sake of Michael. I then drove home, listening to some good old music, and then went to sleep. The next morning, I rose for church and participated therein. We played some Magic afterward, I went to D&D, and I got some really good role-playing in. I must say, I've been really able to step into playing Quinn Route as of late. It's been a lot of fun. I then did dishes for what will very likely, and very hopefully, be the last time, because Neil and Sydney have moved. I'll actually get to the moving of them later, but the important thing is that a new place has its very own state-of-the-art dishwasher, and that's a mega yay. Don't underestimate how significant having things like a dishwasher is. Anyway, I did dishes for them, and then I played some Halo with the guys, which was fun as always, and we rounded the night with some Magic games. Monday began the school cycle afresh. I worked to study for ECE test, which, I don't know how I've done yet, but depending on my result, I'm either screwed or really screwed. After school, I then went to Ratio, where Sydney gave a presentation on both Mormon doctrine and her story concerning Mormonism, particularly the leaving of it. And I will say, watching her video of her telling her parents she was leaving hit me way harder than I expected it to. I had to revert to Alex 1.0 just to keep my emotions in check, and it definitely caught me off guard. So, presentation, very good. Not just because it moved me, but it was also really informative. So, good job, Sydney, if you ever read this. After that, I went home and finished an anime, which I thought would be epic, but it wasn't, so I was kind of disappointed, and then I slept, disappointedly. Tuesday was just a routine, school, work, math. I did a bit of things at the Baja Building Club, but I left halfway because nothing was really happening. And then I got one game of Magic in with Joe and Benj before I received a call from Mom letting me know our water heater had broken and my dirt basement had flooded. Woo! Dirt basement plus flooding is not a good combo. So yeah, I came home, and thankfully Myra's uncle Jediah was super kind to come and fix it at 10 at night, so that was greatly appreciated, especially because since Dad was gone, I'm the next oldest male, and therefore the duty would probably have fallen on me if he did not fix it. I have a picture of the basement, and you can't see much, but it was wet and very squishy. Just chilled and helped out a little bit as Jedi fixed the water heater, but I didn't do too much. And once that was done, I tried to be super hot in under 10 minutes, yet I failed because I haven't played that in ages. And that was basically my day. However, I will say I did end up being super hot in 8 minutes and 50 seconds, which is my all-time record. So if you want to see that entire run, I've uploaded it to YouTube. Wednesday was more school, more study time for the ECE test. I did a bit of math before going over to Neo's for some hang time, and that was great. We had lots of food, and it was just a good time. And then I went to Magic Club, and we did some actually really good games. For me, a good game is largely dependent upon who I'm playing with. And there's this guy, Nick, at Magic Club, who's really fun to play with. He's not uptight, he just enjoys games, he has a lot of knowledge. And it was good. Also, as a complete side fact, but like it was either this meeting or the meeting before it, and due to like Maddie just making some blatantly, well, not socially, attentive comment, Sebastian is gay. Like looking back on it, it seems super obvious. He wears like jewelry and paints his nails and stuff, but for some reason I didn't put that together until just now. Like knowing him for over a year or something. I played with Sebastian in Magic for ages. So yeah, just a fun fact. I am oblivious to your sexual orientation, apparently. So yeah, Magic games went well. I had a good time, and that was great. Thursday, I did my normal routine, even though I had my scary ECE test, because, the way I see it, being a good human is more about succeeding in all of life than just tests. Thus, I rock climbed in the morning, and for the first time, I noticed a definite improvement in my rock climbing routine. Not routine, roots. I have to turn off my phone from buzzing. Boop. No buzzing. Okay, and I'll take a drink. In other words, I can complete and do more levels, and that was cool. I then partook in a beautiful quiet time. Man, it was like maximally peaceful. I wish I could find someone who enjoys my instrumental music as much as I do, and then just have them bask in it with me. That would just be great. But until that day arrives, I guess only I will understand what true tranquility feels like. I then took my ECE test of death, and we'll see how that goes. And thereafter, I did homework and worked on this life demo at work, and then attended Sydney's singing training. And as it turns out, regarding that, you need to breathe your diaphragm if you're singing, and I suck at that. It actually took, I guess it doesn't take anymore. So it actually took like so much conscious effort to breathe my diaphragm. I wasn't able to actually sing because I couldn't think of the words and breathe my diaphragm. So yeah, ever since then I've been singing in the car with my diaphragm whenever I have a chance. And yep, my stomach's actually gotten sore from exercising my diaphragm. Kind of funny. So yeah, we did that. That was good. I then decided to try and console Sydney because she was having a down day. And as we talked, I got us both sushi and I watched her dating show with her, which, not gonna lie, was close to liquid death. Like, not only was it non-anime, which already makes it bad, but it was just watching people date and drama. And I mean, I guess it could have been worse, but it very much hurt my soul. And I actually cannot understand how anyone could willingly subject themselves to that. Like, it was painful. It's like, oh, look, this is what hell feels like. Would you like to enter it for free? So, yeah, okay, that's an exaggeration. Anyway, it wasn't my favorite. However, when I got back, I did receive 2 anime posters I had ordered in the mail, and they're epic, so that consoled me from my, dating show watching. I then talked to William some before we had to eat, so we didn't get to finish our conversation, and then I worked on my nunchucks, which I did finish, and I have pictures of them, and I'm pretty happy with them. One of them is, like, weighty, and the other one's, like, cool looking. Yep, I finished those, and then I caught up with Caleb a bit before he and Ben head off to New Zealand. They're currently in New Zealand, by the way. Just hanging out. That Friday, aka the day before break started, I came in way overconfident to my Mech 105 midterm because I had like a spectacular grade in that course. I was like, I'll be fine, and then I got like a 70 on the test, and I was like, okay, I understand. Still have to study, so lesson learned. I then did work and went to my classes, and I decided to skip my math class because, let's be honest, knowing Anthony, my math teacher, I almost guarantee he had class for like 10 minutes in this lesson out because it was like at 4 o'clock before break. There's no way he held us there. So yeah, I used the time not going to math class to instead run on the treadmill at CSU and listen to the first part of C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy because William like swears by it. He thinks it's spectacular. And I mean, I thought it was I didn't get super far, but I wasn't particularly sucked in. He does say it gets exponentially better, but this is what everyone says, so how much truth is there in that? I don't know. However, I listening to the book did make the run go by a lot faster, and that was a pleasant result, so I'll probably listen to audiobooks in the future, if not the Space Trilogy. Thereafter, I went to Joe's house for a pseudo-birthday party celebration, which was in addition to the usual activities of movie nights on Fridays, which I don't ever attend. And then we played Magic a little bit before watching one of the Jurassic Park movies, which in my opinion was indistinguishable from all the other Jurassic Park movies, and terribly underwhelmingly boring, but that's just my opinion. And after that, Noah and I followed up on our previously arranged meeting, which, due to the hour at which it was conducted, turned out to be at McDonald's because that was the only place open. And we caught up on life, talked a bit of philosophy, and then it was good. I'm glad Noah organized it. Saturday, break began, and I did not get to sleep in because I attended a book study in the morning with Alan and Matt, and we're still inching our way through Owens. So yeah, that was good. I then got to play some VR before meeting with the Macy's, save Mr. Macy, at a coffee shop, and just catch up with them and play Catan, and it was decent, cordial. I think Amelia is the only one of them I could like independently become friends with, but even then I'm not sure. Like we get along well as family friends, and we do stuff together. It's cool, but we just don't talk any other time, so I'm not really sure if we count as friends or not. After that, I joined in a self-hosted draft that Braden put on as place, and that was okay. I'm glad I went, and Braden did give us a prize pack for winning games, but the tension between him and Maddie is getting pretty tangible at this point, so it's a bit uncomfortable. But it was still it was still a decent time. Once I got home, I got on a call with Liam, talked with him some, and almost beat him in an anime quiz, which is far closer than I've gotten in quite some time. I was like off by like 4 or something. And then I did a bit of Beat Saber and slept. After church next day, I did a big 6-player Magic game at the Lunch Bunch, and that was a blast. But it was sadly cut short by play practice because there was a Christmas play that everyone was participating in. I then joined all the peoples at Neo's house for the last session at Neo and City's apartment and the semi-final session of the campaign in all, and it was pretty good. After that, I came home, ate food, watched some anime, spent like 2 hours trying to figure out how to weave this stupid chainmail pattern that I had down like 2 months ago and could do in my sleep. And I did finally figure it out through a bit of reverse engineering after like 2 hours, but now I forgot it again. So I'm kind of radically disappointed in myself. Yeah, I know there's some video somewhere that I found, but I can't find it again. So yeah, I was pained by that process, and I then started to do something else because I was like, this is painful. And I bought this VR puzzle game, which I think is the best VR puzzle game I've played so far. It's a VR game of the old thing called Myst. It's a really like old 1993 puzzle game. And what I think makes it so cool is they don't tell you how to do anything, or like even if you get the puzzle right, they just stick you on an island and be like, "Good luck." And so, like overall, I very much enjoyed the learning on the job principle of the game. However, there were a few instances where I found it super vexing. See, one of the puzzles is you're stuck in this series of crisscrossing paths on the ground and basically have to find your way out through the maze. But the only thing that distinguishes one junction from another junction is a sound it plays when you arrive at said junction. And so I spent like 2 hours going back and forth between junctions and trying to figure out like, was there some complex pattern and stuff. And then when I couldn't find a complex pattern, I was like systematically mapping every path, only to realize that after like 2 hours, the sound that corresponded to each junction corresponded to the direction I need to go on my compass. So yeah, and then once I figured that out, solved the maze in like 3 minutes. And it's cases like that where you're like, okay, if you had told me that, or given me an indication of that, then I would have solved this puzzle in 3 minutes. But no, I spent 2 hours. But I guess that's kind of how puzzles go. However, the other case, I'm not going to forgive so easily. So the other case was super frustrating because there's like this 3-digit combo lock, right? Where you had a lever that could move either the top 2 rings or the bottom 2 rings of this ring lock. And they give you the combo answer. It's like 7, 3, 2. No, it's like 1, 2, 3 or something like that. And so, obviously, I'm like, it can't be as simple as moving the 3 locks into the position of 1, 2, 3. Especially because whenever you move the lever, it moves 2. So if you pull the top lever, it'll move the top 2. And if you pull the bottom lever, it'll move the bottom 2. And there's three rows, which means that the middle one gets moved 2 every time you pull 1 top, 1 bottom. And so I spent like over an hour trying to figure out how to solve this stupid puzzle. And I'm like, I have pictures of my work, just me scribbling, like trying every possibility. And I know it looks like a bunch of scribbles because it is, because how my handwriting is. But like, it was the worst. Like I sat down to even use my engineering brain where I formulated the problem into mathematical equations and then to solve them algebraically, only to get the result that like it can't be solved. And I'm like, well, I must be misunderstanding the problem somehow. And so I spent like 2 hours like remodeling the problem mathematically, like going through every possibility, only to discover, that if you hold the right lever, not either lever, mind you, only the right one, then you can independently move the middle section. Which means it's literally just turning the thing to the combo given, but you have to hold the right lever. So it's not like this complex puzzle. No, it was super simple. And so that was super annoying. Because, like, I actually worked so hard, only to just be like, whatever. I mean, it's good to note that my equations did correctly tell me that I could not solve the problem. So I modeled it correctly, which means I actually can math well and I do a good engineering job. But it was still super annoying. So yeah, aside from those 2 cases, I really did like the game, and I highly recommend it to anyone with a Quest. It's probably the best puzzle game for sure. I did end up having my battery die though, so I kind of needed miss for a bit and went back to trying to figure out the chainmail thing, and then I gave up. And then Sam Treat sent me a video about Lego engines, and I proceeded to travel down the first YouTube rabbit hole I've done in, I think, like 3 years or something, about people making YouTube engines, which had no relevance to anything, but I was like, ooh, this is interesting. And yeah, it's clear how you can easily go down YouTube rabbit holes, so I'm going to stray away from that. Next morning, Tuesday, I had no quiet time since I got up in the morning to help Neo and Sydney move, and I gotta say, like, perhaps I'm just a bit spoiled with good moving education, or whatever, but they did not prepare. Like, look, moving is a skill. It's a skill that I'm personally well versed in. But I don't think those that haven't moved before understand this. That's a skill, or care to understand it. So please, if you ever want me or anyone else to move, you, for that matter, please put things in boxes. Label those boxes, organize those boxes and know where you want those boxes to go. Because when you're just like dumping stuff in a box and then like sealing it up, kinda, or just being like, I don't know, put it somewhere, like it hurts my soul. Okay. Anyway, to be fair, the bad ones weren't horrible, but still, I've seen much better movie. I then hauled boxes for like 2 hours and not 2 hours, 4 hours in total. That's the actual hauling. I was there for like 6 or something. We took breaks and stuff. At the end of it all, I did get a little bit sad about leaving their apartment, I will say, because I do have a lot of good memories there. And aside from that, it kind of represents the end of an era because, Jeremy's gone. There's a good chance John will leave to some distant state soon. Neo and Sydney, as of next semester, are no longer in college, and everyone's just kind of becoming adult, living an adult life. I mean, it's not like just Neo and Sydney, it's kind of all the people I know my age. They're stepping into being an adult and all the boring tedium that comes with it, and I find that a little bit tragic. But, morning aside, I helped them move, and then I met with Joe, to go shopping for some Magic cards. We played a few one-on-one games, and everyone came to his house, and we all did an escape room together. There were 8 of us in total: Ty, Karina, Joe, Ben, Sam, Johanna, Noah, and myself, and we did pretty well. The room was pretty meh, but the people were cool, so that was made a good time. And there's a picture of us like beating it. We did beat it with 18 minutes and no hints, so that's good. Also, Sam has the dope sunglasses and is clearly the coolest among us. There were quite a few puzzles I did brute force my way through, which I always feel like is more successful because like there was 5 blocks needed, right? We had 4 of the blocks, and I was like, well, the blocks are used magnetic, so I used a magnetic piece from a different part to open the door when we didn't have the last box. So stuff like that, where you're like, ha, the true puzzle is beating the puzzles. That's why I feel rewarded when we do that. So yeah, anyway, after the escape room, we all came back to Joe's place and we played Magic till midnight. The next day, I did engage in quiet time in the morning. I had the super dumb missed puzzle experience I ranted about earlier, and then met with the Ratchet Christie game, as well as Katie in the flesh, for a much better done escape room of Fairway stuff. There were 9 of us in that one, and honestly, it was overcrowded. I don't know like how half those puzzles got solved. But regardless, we did it, and without any hints. And then after that, we went to Johnson's Corner and got food. And honestly, it was a pretty disappointing whole experience. For one, Katie felt off, or maybe distant. Like I don't know. She wasn't how I remember her being. And 2, I mean, yeah, Noah, Katie's brother, is not the guy I jive with, so we don't really harmonize too well. And he was there the whole time, so it was kind of sad. Third, the whole encounter felt kind of forced. Like we weren't there because we enjoyed each other's company, but because we had to be there. Like there was some formality we had to fulfill. And so we were all just like politely small talking until the time came for us to leave. Like it wasn't a good experience for a number of reasons, and maybe there's reasons that I have that like deep seated for why I'm discontent. But I was pretty radically dissatisfied with the time. After that, I drove home. I built my wall travel deck for Magic, and then gathered some more animiclas for the AMV I will someday make. The next day was Thanksgiving, which I had no clue about until like 2 days before, and that was a decent day. I got to do some quiet time in the morning, which is good. I completed the Mist game according to the true ending instead of one of the bad endings. And then I engaged in some small talk with the resident members of the family that attended the Thanksgiving dinner. It was good to see everyone. I broke my no sugar fast, and man, did that taste good. Sugar is noticeably better when you're deprived of it for a while. And I then head over to the Myers for their Thanksgiving, since ours was wrapping up, and I spent like 3.5 hours just building Lego with Seth. And I basically only made some fancily suspended wheels. Like, don't get me wrong, it's the coolest suspension system I've ever built, but the product was very underwhelming for the amount of time I spent into it. After that, I played table tennis with Benj until it was hijacked by Grace and Johanna, and then we made up this increasingly strange hybrid table tennis game wherein Ben and I were tasked with returning the ball. Sorry. Should our resident female miss, aka if Grace missed the ball, I would try and hit it back. And we started by using our hands, but then we ended up using stuffed bears as paddles, and then Lily and Sam started like chucking balls across the table, and yeah, it was a whole idea. I have a picture that Seth took without my knowledge, so yeah, given there were so many, I should use one of them, I guess. We did that until Noah and Joe arrived, and we played a crazy game of Magic where we had like 30 mana each and so much card draw and tons of things to play, and it was crazy. Joe played his group hug deck, and I played my wall deck for the first time, and it was a combo of those two that made it really good and time consuming. We played until it was like midnight and 30 minutes, I think, too. After that, Grace and I had a good talk on the drive home, which oddly enough was probably the highlight of my day. The next day, I supervised Neo and gave him a little bit of help as he changed his own oil. He then paid me with some Five Guys. We then watched Grimgar Ashes and Illusions at his news place, and it was way more sketch than I remembered it being, so that was fun. After that, me, him, and Sydney went over to their old place and played some Magic, because I was kind of nostalgic. And it turns out Neo has this killer 1v1 deck. Like, it decimated both my black and my white, which almost always win in 1v1s. But it's only because he has these dumb enchantments that give him protection from the color whenever and you're fighting a mono-color deck. Like, if you're protection from black and you're playing a mono-black deck, that's ridiculously overpowered. And he can fish for them. So, yeah. Thankfully, my blue deck was able to beat him, albeit not utterly. So, at least I have that one. But regardless, he did really well. And after that, I went back home and went to sleep. Yesterday, I met with Joe for a while. I met with him at like 12, and we hung out for most of the day. We started off playing like a 2-hour game of Magic, which was good, but honestly, I'm getting kind of like Magic fatigued. Like, I just played so much Magic as of late. I'm feeling like it's more of a chore than a privilege right now. So yeah, we did that, and we went on a drive. We talked about some personal stuff as well as some philosophy stuff, where I kind of just graced him with all my new philosophical problems. I'm like, oh look, I have a bunch of new problems for you to carry. Here you go, and I dumped it on him, which I'm sure he's deeply grateful for. Then we went back and started talking more philosophy until Bench came over. And then after he came, we played a game with him of Magic, and then they decided to go bug Noah. And I was originally going to join them, but I was like, I'm socially fatigued, and I'd rather just go home. So, because I've done so many social things at this point, as you now know. So I ended up just going home, watching an anime movie with my friends, and my friends, I mean family, which Sydney, not the Neo City, recommended to me. And it was actually really good. Like, probably my second favorite anime movie thus far. So once that ended, I just kind of like went to sleep. I got some more anime clips and then went to bed. Finally, as for today, I went to church, played 4 more hours of Magic, and then came home and sorted Magic cards and found a new anime to watch and worked on this. And I just gotta say that I really felt like it was the culmination of a bit of mediocrity of my life. And what I mean by that is just like I used to be more ambitious than this. Like just writing out this whole life of Demo. I just feeling like, what have I done with my life? Played 7 hours of Magic repeatedly over and over again. I don't know. I'm kind of disappointed in myself. Like before, I would consider these long games of Magic just a waste of time, and I wouldn't engage in them. But I mean, maybe that's not a way to go about life. But the point is just I'm not living as intentionally right now as I would like to be, and I want to change that. So I'm just kind of including this in here as my personal resolution that next Life of the Email, I want it to contain a whole lot less I played Magic for 4 hours sentences. So yeah, resolution. You all know it now. Anyway, yep, like all good things, this Life of the Email must come to a close. And until next time, I wish you well. And don't become a heretic, because in the words of Aquinas, if a heretic returns to the faith, let his soul be forgiven and then be parted from his body. I don't know why I chose that accent, but I'm paraphrasing. But that is basically what he said. He said, if a heretic comes back the second time, just kill him. Kill him. Forgive his soul, mind you, but kill him. And this is why we love Aquinas. Okay, bye.